Hi, it's Joe Slack from the Board Game Design course. And today on Behind the Design, we're going to take a closer in-depth look at the Stefan Dora game, For Sale, by Eagle-Gryphon Games. We'll have a look at the mechanics, as well as some of the game design choices that went into the creation of this game. So, let's check out For Sale. For Sale is a bidding and bluffing game, in which you try to capture different properties and then sell them off in the second round. So the game consists of two phases. The first phase consists of an auction, but it's done a little differently than in some games, which is really interesting. Let's say we have a 5-player game. There's going to be 5 properties set up. So in every round, every player is going to get exactly one property. Now, which property they get depends on how much they're willing to bet and how much they're willing to bluff. So let's say I'm the first player. I'm going to make a bid of, let's say, 1,000, which is the minimum bet. Now, the next player has the option to either bet any amount higher. It could be 2,000, could be 5,000, could be 10,000, could be all their money. But they also have the option to take the lowest value card for themselves. And that will continue player after player until all the properties have been taken. So whenever you come in and it's your turn, you can always take the lowest value property for no money, or keep betting and it will keep going around for all the players that are in. The player who bids the most in the end will get the highest value property. But there's a lot of bluffing, double bluffing, and countering to try to trick your opponents or to try to get the property that you really want. So let's say the second player comes in with a bid of 2,000. And then it's going to go on to the next player and the next player. Some player may see that the stakes are getting up too high once, say, the third player bids 7,000 and really raises it up high. So they may just decide they're going to take the lowest value property. But when it comes back to the first player, they're going to have to decide whether they want to bid even higher to try to stay in this or take the lowest value property. Now they already have some money in here, so they're going to have to pay only half of the value, but it's rounded up. So they would, in this case, pay the full 1,000 to take this property. Let's say we had had another bet in here as well, in between. This player here now has the choice. They can take this pretty decent property for only 1,000 because it's only half of that, or they can try to keep up the pace here. So they may pay the 1,000 and keep 1,000 for themselves and take the property. Now we're up to this player here. They can get a really good property for only $2,000, but they're letting the other player take the really high value one. Now, when it comes down to these decisions, players are going to be going back and forth, and in some cases they're going to make players pay a lot more than they should for really low value properties. But also, if you're not careful and you just take this one at too cheap a price, you might be letting somebody else get an even better property for next to nothing. What it really comes down to is how much variation there is in the board. So like we saw, we've got quite a bit of variation in this board, as the values range from 1 to 30. So we've got almost the low end all the way up to the high end. But when you've got a different distribution where they're much closer together, you might just take the lowest value property because the next one is not worth that much more. This is going to go until all of the cards have been played. But the interesting thing is, it will depend on how many players there are in terms of how many cards there are and how many rounds there will be. In a 5 or 6 player game, you're going to use the entire deck. But for less numbers, say for example 4 players, you're only going to have 7 rounds of 4 cards each, with 2 left out of the deck. So you could have any cards missing. You don't know which ones are going to be taken out of the deck. It could be the highest, the lowest, or anything in between. You won't know until all the cards are played, and if you remember. And then we'll move into the second phase of the game. In the second phase, cards will be drawn out equal to the number of players again, and they'll have different ranges of values. They're going to range from 0 to 15 with no 1s in the deck. There's 2 of each in the deck, but some might be taken out depending on the number of players as well. So some of the high or low value cards might not even be present, and you won't know that till later. This is an interesting design choice whenever you have cards that might be excluded from the game because it becomes a little less predictable. All players will simultaneously place a card down, and when they're ready, reveal their card. Whoever played the highest value card will get the highest value prize. followed by the next, and the next, and the next, all the way down. So everybody will get value from these properties that they're essentially selling. They'll take these cards and the money back, and the next round will start. In the instance where you have a display like this, where all the cards are high value, and you play a 1, you're guaranteed to get 10, which is a pretty good value. So it's all about using your cards and selling them off at the right time to get the most value for them. On the other hand, playing a card like a 29, which normally is very, very high in this type of situation, might turn out to be a really bad play when somebody else plays a 30 at the same time. They'll take the 15 and you'll only get 7. So that previous turn when you played the 1 to get $10 was a much better value. That makes for some really interesting decisions in terms of when you're going to play your cards, which ones you hold back, and what you're hoping to come out in future rounds. If you're interested in designing your own game, or would like some free game design resources, check out the 10-minute board game design blueprint and the link below.